Jamunatira vanachari Yamunatira Yamunatira vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamunatira Vanachariyam Yamunatira Vanachariyam Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad-Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasa Tato Jayamudhirayet. Hare Krishna, good morning. Sollen wir Deutsch machen oder Englisch? Englisch, ja? Englisch, okay. Und da haben wir der Filmatisch übersetzt ins Deutsche. Hier ist das deutsche Kanto. Robin, kannst du das rübergeben? So we are reading from the Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 21, Instructions by Maharaj Prithu, text 9 or 10? 10. Please repeat. Kom nu asyam kirting nam shrinoti abhinyo yat vikramochistam ashesham bhupaham lokaham sapalam upajivanti kamam adyapi tan me vadam karmam shudham ko nasya kirtim na srinoti abhigyom yad vikramochishtam ashesha bhupaham lokah sapala upajivanti kamam adyapitam me vadakarma shudham ko nwasya kirtim na srinoti abhigyom ya vikramochishtam ashesha bhupaham loka sapala upajivanti kamam adyapitam me vadakarma shudham ko nasya kirtim na srinoti abhigyom ya vikramochishtam ashesha bhupaham loka sapala upajivanti kamam adyapitam me vadakarma shudham. Anybody else? Okay, we'll read word by word translation. Kaham, who, nu, but, asyam, King Prithu, kirtim, glorious activities, na shrinoti, does not hear, abhignaha, intelligent, yat, his, Vikrama, chivalry, Uchishtam, remnants, Ashesha, innumerable, Bhupaha, kings, Lokaha, planets, Sapalaham, with their demigods, Upajivanti, execute livelihood, Kamam, desired objects, Adya api, up to that, Tat, that, me, and to me, Vada, please speak, Karma, activities, Shudham, auspicious. Translation on purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Prithu Maharaj was so great in his activities and magnanimous in his method of ruling that all the kings and demigods on the various planets still followed in his footsteps. Who is there who will not try to hear about his glorious activities? I wish to hear more and more about Prithu Maharaj because his activities are so pious and auspicious. Purport. Saint Vidura's purpose in hearing about Prithu Maharaj over and over again was to set an example for ordinary kings and executive heads who should all be inclined to hear repeatedly about Prithu Maharaj activities in order to also be able to rule over their kingdoms or states very faithfully for the peace and prosperity of the people in general. Unfortunately, at the present moment, no one cares to hear about Prithu Maharaj or to follow in his footsteps. Therefore, no nation in the world is either happy or progressive in spiritual understanding, although that is the sole aim and objective of human life. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shriyuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpati Gopesha Gopipakanta Radhakanta Namostute Jayatam Surato Pangor Mamamanda Matirgati Matsarvasva Padam Vajo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumada Srimad Ratangara Simhasanasto Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Deva Uprishthalivi Savamana Usmarami Srimandra Sarasarambi Vamsiva Tadatastitaha Karsham Veno Swanar Gopir Gopinata Shriyestunaha Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishavanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Once again the verse. Ko nasya kirtim na shrinoti abhigyo yadvikramo chishtam ashesha bhupaha loka sapala upajivanti kamham adyapitan me vada karma shudham. Prithu Maharaj was so great in his activities and magnanimous in his methods of ruling that all the kings and demigods on the various planets still follow his footsteps. Who is there who will not try to hear about his glorious activities? I wish to hear more and more about Prithu Maharaj because his activities are so pious and auspicious. Prithu Maharaj ki jai. So yes, Prithu Maharaj is one of the iconic stories in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, especially in the 4th canto. And most often when people refer to an ideal rule, people refer to the rule of Lord Ram, Rama Raja. So because Lord Ram was such an ideal king, and in all of his different, you could say, duties, he clearly, you could say, he had a very clear hierarchy, which duty he had to follow, and always, or very often, duties might be at odds. You have to make a decision. That's always when you are in a position of management or leadership, you have to take decisions, and sometimes it's very difficult to take a decision because either way it seems wrong, maybe, so you always have to make a decision based not on capricious, egoism, but much more on what's really your duty and what's the most beneficial for everybody. One example that comes to mind is the example also of Ashwatthama and Arjuna. It's a famous story in the Srimad-Bhagavatam in first canto, where Ashwatthama, after the defeat of the Kurukshetra battle, he was one of the very few who survived, and he was trying to eradicate, the last offspring of the Kuru dynasty, namely Parikshit Maharaj, who was still in the womb of Uttara. He already successfully had, I don't know if it was before or after, to be honest. Must have been after, actually. He successfully killed the offspring of the 5 Pandavas. The 5 Pandavas had 5 children. Each one of them had 1 son, and he had killed them. He was actually thinking he will kill the Pandavas, but he actually killed the 5 sons of the Pandavas. So cowardly, he used the most powerful weapon on the planet, basically, the Brahmastra, to aim it at an unborn child, Parikshit Maharaj. And Lord Krishna protected, of course, that child. And but the other children of the Pandavas, they were actually killed by Ashwatthama. So Arjuna vowed to Draupadi, I will bring you his head, like he has decapitated your sons, I will bring you his head, and then you can stand on his head and take shower. So it's a very gruesome picture. But when you are, imagine your children, all your 5 children have been killed, in cold blood, then you have, such kinds of, something like this might seem very pleasurable, full revenge, So he chased Ashwatthama, he caught Ashwatthama, who again threw a Brahmastra. And Brahmastras, of course, are a very interesting topic. I'll shortly talk about Brahmastra. Brahmastra is considered to be more or less the most powerful weapon in the universe. Brahmastra is the weapon of Lord Brahma. And in the different Puranas, we find different descriptions of, its effects and how it works. And it's the similarities with an atomic explosion are very, very similar. So that's why sometimes the Srila Prabhupada would directly translate, Brahmastra, atomic weapon. Of course, the atomic weapon is a mechanical, splitting, of the atoms, and then the chain reaction an uncontrolled chain reaction that follows. Basically, you destroy the atomic structure, and then there's an uncontrolled explosion. And when you control it, then it's, you can make electricity. But if it's uncontrolled, it's a terrible explosion. And when an atomic weapon is detonated, a bright light, it's like a flash, like a blinding flash of light. And if you look directly into it, many people became blind just from looking into it, from distance, even from long distance. So a blazing light, and then you feel, and then there's nothing, It's like this huge flash of light. The light is faster. You see the light first, and then a few seconds later, everything is burned and destroyed. And literally, things, depending on how much distance you are, things just evaporate. Everything just evaporates, dissolves, melts. So the description of the Brahmastra is exactly the same. It's the same description. It's a blazing light. Is visible. It says like more brilliant than 1,000 suns, and then the same effects are described. So therefore, Brahmastra could be compared to an atomic weapon. But of course, the difference is that the Brahmastra is not a mechanical manipulation of nature, but it's based on mantra. So when warriors, when qualified warriors want to use such a weapon, they don't need to have a crazy scientist who builds it for them, because many unqualified nations nowadays have weapons, or the danger is there they will get an atomic weapon because some crazy scientist helps them. A crazy scientist who really likes to build weapons, he's just looking for somebody to pay him to build one weapon, to build an atomic bomb. Or very often it's all kinds of weird shady deals. Some big company is selling the information to some nation, and then somebody who's not qualified and might have the bomb. And there's a constant threat nowadays that somebody, some nation or some terroristic terror group might get hold of that weapon. Imagine. Nowadays a few countries have it. Some of them a lot, especially Russia and the USA. So a big fear is that some, terrorist group have an atomic weapon, then they can threaten everybody. Imagine, not a good situation. So in a similar way, or you could say in a much more sophisticated way, the Brahmastra was only handed by the guru to a qualified disciple. If the guru saw the qualification in the disciple to carry such a responsibility, only then the disciple would be instructed in how to invoke this weapon. Because the Brahmastra is not dependent on a huge mechanical device and a big rocket, a missile which can reach thousands of miles far. But the Brahmastra is actually invoked through a mantra. Just like we receive initiation, you can be also initiated into the Brahmastra. Brahmastra initiation. Imagine, you make a yagya, and then you don't get the Diksha mantra, but you get Brahmastra mantra. And in all the different descriptions, be it Brahmastra or other weapons also, the way is to touch purified water. Basically, you have to do Achman before you can invoke this weapon. You touch purified water, then you are, that's the beginning. Just like whenever you do any form of puja or ceremony, you purify the self. So like that, to actually invoke the Brahmastra, the weapon of Brahma, you have to, do Achman, touch purified water, and then you chant this mantra. And then the power of this weapon is in this sound, in this mantra, and you can put it on any object. You can put this on a arrow, which is very common description. The Kshatriya would chant the mantra, touch purified water, chant the mantra, invoke the weapon. And if you watch some old, also new, but the old ones are the best, the old Mahabharata, and Ramayana, they're like chanting the mantra, and then the weapon starts glowing, and then the head turns into a snake or something, or a big fireball or something, depending what weapon you invoked. And very interesting story in the Ramayana. There's this description of Lava and Kusha, the two sons of the twin sons of Lord Ram. At one point, before they know that Ram is their father, they actually capture the Rajasuya, the horse, which is traveling the world, to establish Lord Ram as supreme, emperor. And they capture the horse. So the armies of Ayodhya, including Hanuman, Sugriva, Lakshman, Bharata, they all come to rescue the horse, But these two young boys, they received already the knowledge, of mystical weapons. So, and they don't have arrows, they're two Brahmana boys basically. They just take, a piece of small pebble, small pebble. They chant the mantra on it, and then they throw it, and then, big explosion. It's described like that in the Ramayana. Sometimes they use just small grass, or small stick, and they charge the small weapon with, mantra power, and they defeat everybody. They defeat everybody. They even hang Hanuman upside down, on a tree. Yes, so these are very powerful weapons, usually only given to qualified individuals. Not only that, the Brahmastra weapon is much more sophisticated than the atomic weapon because it can be pulled back. This is one of the main, you could say, qualifications. There's two steps into the Brahmastra initiation. The first step is you receive the mantra. You can invoke the weapon, but you're not considered to be qualified, or you don't really have the weapon unless you have the knowledge how to pull it back also, And only then you're considered to be, you could say, fully weaponized, Or in one sense, the logic was that if you don't have the knowledge how to pull it back, you will never use it. That was the logic behind it, So, because nobody would be so crazy to throw a weapon, such a dangerous weapon, which maybe for whatever reasons you can pull back if it's necessary. So, the story is that Arjuna was the most qualified disciple of Dronacharya, or the favored disciple of Dronacharya. So he received this weapon, and so the son of Dronacharya, Ashwatthama, also wanted a weapon, and he was annoying his father, every day. Please, me too, And Dronacharya was like, yeah, you're my son, but I don't see the qualification, So he didn't give it to him for a long time. But at one point, Ashwatthama managed, with, putting a bad conscience on him. You're my father, how can you do this to me, more or less like that. So at one point, Dronacharya became weak, and he actually initiated Ashwatthama in the process, but only the first part, He never gave him the full knowledge because he thought, he has the weapon, but he cannot really use it, But he did, Ashwatthama used the weapon, even he had no knowledge, of how to pull it back. So when Arjuna was chasing Ashwatthama, out of desperation, he used the weapon. He used the Brahmastra, completely out of control. It was threatening a great devastation. Because another aspect of the Brahmastra is also that you can, when you invoke this weapon and you shoot it, or you release it, you could say, you can also specify in your intention, sankalpa, you can specify whom it should target. That's described in detail. Prabhupada also mentions it a few times. You can specify, should it destroy the whole planet? Should it destroy just this one city? Should it destroy just this one person? That's how detailed you can. It can be like a huge destruction, or you can specify it. On a very specific person only, to be targeted. So this also you can do with an atomic weapon, modern atomic weapon. The atomic weapon which was released were released in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The only time they were used was by the all too righteous Americans. And it was, I think, I don't know, 500, 600,000 people, like within seconds, dead. But these weapons are actually, I forgot the exact number, but I saw once a comparison. These weapons, which were released back then, were maybe 100 times smaller than the current weapons, which are everywhere. So the destruction which is possible is, unimaginable. So yes, Brahmastras were very different in the sense that you could specify directly. Whoever was launching the Brahmastra who could directly specify whom or what he's targeting. So Ashwatthama did not have this ability, and he just released it. And so Krishna asked Arjuna, shoot your own Ashwatthama, counter the Brahmastra of Ashwatthama, and then pull both back. That's what Arjuna did then. He released a second Brahmastra, neutralized it, and then pulled it back. So yes, but the point we're trying to make is something else. Then Arjuna captured Ashwatthama, and then he was not so sure anymore what to do, because he had promised Draupadi, I will cut his head and I bring his head to you. He murdered your children, no mercy. But then he was standing in front of Ashwatthama, and he was thinking, yeah, actually he's the son of my guru, so he's a Brahmana by birth at least, he's not behaving like a Brahmana, and Sanskrit term is called a Brahma Bandhu, he's of Brahminal origin, but is only related to the Brahmanas, not really a Brahmana. But still, he considered him like a Brahmana, so he hesitated to actually kill him, because to kill a Brahmana is not very auspicious. So, interestingly, Krishna pushed him in both directions. He said, yeah, kill him, whoever commits such a crime, you have to kill, You are entitled to kill. There's even a list, of different, when somebody, there's a list of different items, I forgot the list now, but in the Bhagavad Gita is also mentioned, when it is justified to kill somebody. Karmically speaking, if somebody kills, the best is if this person, as soon as possible also experiences that same pain or suffering, then the karma is gone. If so in that sense, we are actually against, or we are for penalty of death. We think it's good. If ideally, of course, the problem nowadays is that you never know. In the modern justice system, sometimes very complicated to determine who's really, how you say, guilty. And maybe somebody who's not guilty, is killed. Then it's problem. But in principle, the idea is that if there's a very clear, a person has committed a very clear, crime, especially murder, then the karma which is pending anyways for him is to be killed as well. So if he's not chastised in this life, then it's pending for his next life. He will experience it in the future. So Arjuna was hesitating, and at the same time he was trying to fulfill Draupadi's desire. So he took Ashwatthama to Draupadi, and then Draupadi also became merciful. And instead of being revengeful, she even, like, out of custom, even paid respects, because he's the the son of the guru, and a Brahmana. So she paid respect even to Ashwatthama. So Arjuna was very confused, and it's a very interesting section. What Krishna is, they're talking back and forth, and Krishna is, I forgot the exact verse, but Krishna gives a hint, more or less. You have to kill him and not kill him at the same time. It's like, what I'm supposed to do, So that's the difficulty, to make a decision. Very tough decision. But then he understood Krishna's, instruction. So he killed his honor, So he removed his a kshatriya, like nowadays still the Sikhs in India, they have this kshatriya head, how do you call it? Men's bun, like a knot of hair at the front, you know. But that's not something the Sikhs invented. Kshatriyas have it, you know. Kshatriyas in the Bhagavad you can read, you know. A Kshatriya has this, and it's kind of his Shakti, also his energy, you know, is stored there. You know? And this is described a few times in different stories, how actually hair can store energy. You know? So yogis, you know, they do that. You know, they grow their hair very long, and they actually store their energy in their hair. You know? Very interesting. And one famous story of this is also Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He was a magistrate, I think, at that point, in Orissa. And there was this very famous, you could say, impostor avatar, you know, false avatar, you know. Somebody saw this Abhay Charan movie. Have you seen it all? No? You should watch it. Yeah. Nowadays it might seem a little, some parts are, especially the parts when Srila Prabhupada comes to the West is a little bit difficult to watch because we have real footage of Prabhupada, you know, in the West. But everything before that is really good, you know, and so there's his followers. Falgu Bhagavan Ki Jai, you know. Which of course they probably did not chant, but it's trying to make sure everybody understands it's a Falgu, a wrong, false Bhagavan, you know. So this false incarnation was doing a lot of havoc actually. It was all kind of criminal activities, seducing women in large scale. So as the Bhaktivinoda Thakur that time was working for the British government, so it was his duty to, you know, deal with this case, you know. And so he ordered him to be imprisoned, and then himself and his entire family became sick, you know, extremely sick. So he was a mystic, you know, who had a lot of powers. He had Shakti. So he managed to, you know, negatively influence, you know, his entire family. You know, they were all suffering. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur understood, and he went there and cut his hair off. You know. And then the curse was gone. His Shakti was gone. You know. So like that, for a Kshatriya, the hair is actually a very important part, you know, of their identity and honor. And you can still see that, you know, when if you really want to disgrace a Sikh, you know, you remove his turban and open his hair in public, you know. That's the worst you could do to him, you know. So in a similar way, Arjuna cut. He just, you know, roughly shaved him with his sword, you know. And not only that, he removed also a stone that he had, because Ashwatthama is a very unique person actually. He's a Chitranjeevi. He's not a normal mortal. And he had, as a partial incarnation of Shiva, he had a mani, a stone in his forehead from birth, you know. So that also was removed, you know. So he was disgraced, you know. He had no position anymore in society. All his, you know, Shakti was gone. And at the same time, he did not really kill him, you know. So that was the tough decision Arjuna had to make. And there is a way always, you know, but it's sometimes not directly visible, you know, how you can fulfill two things at the same time. And Ashwatthama, of course, is considered to be still living, you know. Ashwatthama is considered to be still living. He's a Chitranjeevan, so he's still living. He's still roaming around, you know, somewhere, you know. It says in the jungles and the Himalayas, you know. So recently they made a movie about Ashwatthama, big movie in India. So people are wondering if he saw it, you know. Yes, and another, because we're talking about Prithu Maharaj, Lord Ram, then Arjuna. Lord Ram also, in different situations, he did not, you could say, make a decision based on what was best for himself. You know? And it's one of the most, you could say, the most painful parts of the Ramayana is when Lord Ram sends Sita away. You know, at the end of the Ramayana, you know, many people don't tell that part of the Ramayana because it's too painful. They come back from exile, and then it's happy end in Ayodhya, you know. But the story continues, and it's not happy end, you know, at all. heart-wrenching, Heart-wrenching is a really good word, because wrenching means it's like you squeeze the heart, and it's really painful. You cry blood, So, but Lord Ram did it, because he would have preferred to remain with Sita and Ayodhya, of course, but he saw it as his duty as a king, he put that duty before his family duty, basically, So you could say the general hierarchy could be, you have your individual duty, then you have your duty to your family, but then you have your duty, especially if you're a king, your duty to your country, So you should put, or if you can, most people cannot live up to this standard, but Lord Ram gave that example, that he always put, sometimes the most inconvenient for himself, but what was the moral duty, he put that, first, which was best for everybody. So, yes. And Prithu Maharaj is also such an exemplary king. He is, of course, also considered to be an incarnation of Krishna. Shakti Avesha Avatar means he's a living entity like you and me, but he's fully empowered by the I forgot the exact word, but I think the power to rule of Krishna, something like that. Basically, Krishna's ability to be a good ruler, that Shakti empowered him, and he's an avatar of that energy, basically. And his wife, what's the name of the Prithu's wife? Ruchi? No. Archie. The way around, not Ruchi, Archie. Archie. She was the incarnation of Lakshmi's, of wealth. I forgot exactly, but it's mentioned in the same context. So they were basically like Lakshmi Narayan, were normal living entities like you and me, but not normal in the sense that they were fully empowered, specifically each one of them, by the Shakti of Vishnu to rule and to be, in power, and Archie, an aspect of Lakshmi, also empowered by an aspect of Lakshmi. And one of the most interesting aspects I found about Prithu Maharaj, because now in this section he's returning to his city, and there's a huge welcome after he performed the ceremony, and also very amazing all these descriptions of how elaborate the decorations and infrastructure were of those cities, so big cities, and sometimes we try, whenever there's a festival, we try to prepare and clean up, but the level of what they did and clean up, and of course, if everybody does at the same time, it works, but you hear, they would wash all the streets, with rose water, and they would put plantain or banana trees in the entrances and decorate everything with flowers and garlands. And they welcomed Prithu Maharaj with so much love, because he was like a true father. So they really loved. Was a truly popular ruler. And even nowadays, there are different, you could say, or you call it, surveys that are done to see what is the approval rating of a certain president or prime minister. And very often, when I first read this, I was really surprised, because the vast majority of rulers in the world, they don't get a rate more than 40 or 30, and many are much lower even, and there are very select few who have, a rating above 50, So what does it mean? It means the majority of people don't really like the people who are ruling them, actually, That's a bad situation, So that's what Prabhupada is saying, that, what did he say? Unfortunately, no one cares about Prithu Prabhu nowadays. Therefore, no nation in the world is either happy or progressive in spiritual understanding. So, of course, they cannot be happy if the most important person in the country is not liked by the majority. And every few years, it's changing. When there is stability, and somebody is really popular and liked, that's very, very uncommon. I remember when I was in school, there was one politician in Germany, I forget his name, I think his name was Gutenberg something. He had a really long name. He was from some, royal family, and he had this appearance also. And somebody forgot his name. Anyways, but he was very popular, and he was also the, I think he was even the Minister of Defense in Germany at that time. And everybody was surprised because usually politicians people don't like, So he was one politician people really liked. He was very young, he could talk to people in their language, and he was not and whatever he got elected with huge margin. So everybody was like, wow, this could be finally a leader that is popular, Of course, populism also has its dangers, because sometimes popular leaders, they just tell what people want to hear, and then very soon people realize, he couldn't really live up to it. And this was one of this, very interesting cases, because he was so popular and everybody was thinking he's going to be the next chancellor, 100%. If he, is racing so fast, everybody likes him, but we don't hear about him anymore. Why? Because they realized that his entire doctor thesis was copied, and then, popularity gone, So, like that. But what I thought was very interesting was because usually in Western democracies, it's not so ideal if somebody is too popular, because, sometimes they have this fear. Somebody becomes too popular and people just, follow him blindly, something like that. But all the articles that we were reading in school, was a school project we were reading about him, and all the articles, they were like happy, because finally a politician which people like, So, and then, the big disappointment, that actually he's also, not real, not good. So in the case of Prithu Maharaj, we have somebody who, who embodies, the, you could say the soft nature, of a mother and the powerful nature of a father, at the same time. And yesterday in the Mahavatar Nrsimha movie, everybody was here, no? Who was not here? Okay, so maybe we should show it again today. We were thinking we don't have to. You will come if you show it at 7 again? Yeah? Okay, then we should show it again. And in one part, Prahlad Maharaj, they were, because he was very soft and caring of, of the small animals, and he was very, soft, kind nature, so his demonic, asuric friends, he thought he's weak, and Prahlad is asked by his father, what is the qualification of a king, and Prahlad says, all the right things, very, very wise, but then he also emphasizes, how he should be selfless and, take care. And then that's perceived as being like a weakness, actually, to care for those who are in need, to care for those who are, protect those who are weaker. And then they showed it very nicely in the movie, because they're in a situation where they were teasing Prahlad, a porcupine comes, and shoots his, spikes, and Prahlad jumps in front, to protect this, boy who would have been harmed, And then everybody realizes, oh, actually it is possible to be strong and compassionate at the same time, because that's sometimes what it's, if there's a strong leader, he cannot be compassionate, and if he's a compassionate leader, he's weak, That's sometimes the dilemma or perception. But in Lord Ram, in Parikshit Maharaj, because Parikshit Maharaj is also very, very, very amazing example like that. When he was born in this chapter, the astrologers predict, all the qualities he will have of all the different kings. It's one of the most interesting parts of the first canto, I think, because you hear about all the different kings, who were very selfless, or Lord Ram, or also Yudhishthir, he's compared to Yudhishthir as well. And so in that section, all the different and greatest kings, are mentioned, and how Parikshit will embody, all of this in his own life. And But what is always visible is that these kings are extremely soft, and the Singadev is maybe the best example also. He has Tavakara Kamala, he has very soft, lotus hands, It's described that there's a few descriptions of Krishna's body in the scriptures, and it says when a leaf of a flower petal, falls on his body, it leaves a mark. That's how soft, he is. Imagine, But at the same time, don't mess up with Krishna, or Nisingadev, He also was very soft. It's like soft like lotuses, his hands, But at the same time, he has nails like thunderbolts. So that's the ideal combination of a Raja Rishi. Because a Raja Rishi, not only in his appearance, and his behavior, but also in his, you could say, inclination, has a clear inclination for, you'd say, very pure, high understanding. Like Parikshit Maharaj, he made a mistake, in his moment of exhaustion, and rage. He offended the sage. But the moment he heard that he would die in 7 days, it is described, he didn't hesitate for a moment, to let go of everything, So there was no attachment, to his kingdom. From 1 second to the other, okay. He embraced the opportunity, actually. He's like, wow, okay. I know when I'm dying, I know what to do, I'm going to take shelter of the sages, I'm going to renounce, I'm going to prepare for death. So, and also Yudhishthira Maharaj is a very famous example of a Raja Rishi. Because Raja, of course, means a king, and Rishi means a sage, or a yogi. And it is described in the Mahabharata that actually Yudhishthira Maharaj was very happy in exile. Bhima did not like it at all. Bhima was very like, oh my God, what am I going to eat? All the Bhima likes to eat. Vrikrodar, he's like voracious like a wolf. And he liked to be in the palace. He didn't like the idea at all. Running around in the forest. But Yudhishthira Maharaj, actually, it says he was like, wow, nice. No politics. Nice nature. So many yogis we can find in the forest. We can talk to them. They can teach me so much. So Yudhishthira Maharaj actually loved it. He actually liked it. Being in the forest. He preferred it. But he fulfilled his duty. When time came, he fulfilled his duty as a kshatriya. He was a powerful kshatriya. But his inclination was actually much more towards being a sage. So that's considered to be the ideal combination. And also the Greeks, different philosophers, have taught or philosophized, about the, what do they call it? I forgot the name. The wise king or the philosopher king. Yeah, the philosopher king. Very often different philosophers have thought about it. That would be the ideal, Ideally, if we have a philosopher, who's really thoughtful, very deep, very ideal character, usually such a person doesn't want to be a king, They want to be, they're usually sages or yogis. But if such a person becomes the king, perfect, And it's, you could say, one of the examples how we can understand how exalted the Vedic tradition and the Bhagavatam is, because, when I was first reading about it or heard about it also from some friends when I was a teenager who were studying philosophy, I was like, yeah, I know a few, We have a few examples actually, And they are thinking, that would be nice, But they don't know who, And when you read that section of Parikshit Maharaj, there's like a whole list, So many, Raja Rishis, great glorious kings. And basically the Bhagavatam is built on that, They just go the lineages of the different dynasties of kings, solar and lunar, And then whenever Raja Rishi comes, then they explain more. Then again, so many names. Okay, again a Raja Rishi. Or an incarnation, or but very often, it's Raja Rishi who stands out, in this dynasty of kings and rulers. So let me look again what Srila Prabhupada, what else he says in the purport. So yes, we should, and I think not too long ago we had this, was it a lecture or Ishtagoshti or somewhere we had it, but we were talking about a similar topic, and there is certainly you could say this is a preaching option, you could say, Generally we might preach at the street level, do Harinam, or distribute books, but increasingly we have also many devotees who actually preach at very, very high levels, like Swayam Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj. He was in Davos, So Davos is famous because once a year in the winter, all the most important business, political, philanthropic, all kinds of leaders meet, in Davos. Of course, there's all kinds of conspiracy theories also, what they're planning, what's going on there. But they are there, The most influential people on the planet, they meet once a year in Swiss, not too far from here. So Swayam Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj, he went there, and he was very influential, people surrounding him and asking him questions, and, just being present there. And we have plenty of information and knowledge to teach, to speak on a very high level, of ideal sociology, ideal political systems, ideal character of leaders, etc. Radhanath Maharaj also regularly is invited. Also in India, Gauranga Prabhu, he very influential. He's regularly invited, to big TV shows. When I was recently in India in February, I talked to him and he mentioned, soon I will be in TV, watch it, So I watched it, and it was really interesting because it was about, the topic was that nowadays they, with artificial intelligence and with the capacity of, you can say, data storage, there is this idea that because we all have, most of us have most people have nowadays a profile, So you have your Facebook profile. Like, I haven't been on Facebook for, I don't know, a few years now, really, but my profile is still there, And sometimes I look inside and all kinds of people are still commenting and doing something there, And so the idea, the theory that evolved was that there is digital immortality, because, you continue to live, I might die, but my Facebook profile will exist forever, Something like that. So this was the premise of the discussion, and based on this also the idea of digital. One person was presenting this, the other person was presenting the medical evolution, to actually physically, make the body live as long as possible, They call it, I forgot, something engineering, bioengineering, or bioregeneration engineering. So basically, there's a few people who, know exactly what to take, how much of, what kind of air to breathe, and ideal amounts of nutrients and minerals, and, and some of them, like, they really go into it, and they're like 70, and they look like 30, 40, So they really, try to engineer to make it perfect, as good as possible, And then there was Gauranga Prabhu, representing, and it was so good, because Gauranga Prabhu had all the answers, just basic Bhagavad Gita, basic Srimad-Bhagavatam, Sankhya Yoga philosophy, and the two other presenters, or it was maybe three, they all looked very speculative, vague, not conclusive, also out of touch in many ways, like, how is this relevant, for, like, daily life or something like that, So Yes, we have plenty of information. The Bhagavatam is the ripe fruit on the Vedas, and we should not underestimate what wisdom is there and how we can present it, and it's our duty to really understand it, how it's relevant, how it's relevant to modern topics, And Gauranga Prabhu was expert. It was very pleasing to see. He expertly could, like any topic they presented, he made a perfect correlation, a relevant, comment, perfectly fitting, for whatever not the difference between body, mind, soul, and different upadhis that we carry, and basically he was saying, social media is the most external, most separated from the true self, that you can get actually, so that's not your true self, also the elements of your body, when you die, they also will continue existing somewhere. That doesn't mean that you continue existing, It's not really you, It's all temporary. Okay, I'll stop here. Maybe there are some questions, comments. Granth Raj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.